Today on Beyond the Headset, the stars of the MLB were shining in Los Angeles for the Midsummer Classic. Who shined the brightest under the lights of Dodger Stadium? Then, is modern day sports contracts about the dream or the money? Get our thoughts and more. Also, as the NFL season nears, we tell you who is on our radar for fantasy football. That and much more coming your way. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ever edition of Beyond the Headset. I am Nathan Buckley, product of Full Sail University's Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting, and I am joined by the Central Michigan Chippewa, Brant Buckley. How are you doing today, Brant?
I'm doing good, Nate. How are you?
I am doing just fine. We start off today's show with a segment called Penny for Your Thoughts. We start with a non-sports topic and then move on to a sports topic. So, Brant, penny for your thoughts. What's on your mind today?
Well, for all the listeners out there paying their pretty penny for my thoughts, I'm going to give them a little bit of an entertaining thought for the day. Here are your 3 facts of the day. The first one is that squirrels are the leading cause of power outages, being 30% of all power outages in the world. The second one is that the inventor of the Pringles can was cremated and buried in a Pringles can when he died. And the third is that a cornflake shaped like the state of Illinois sold for $1,300 back in 2008. What do you think about that, Nate?
Those are some interesting facts, Brant. The one that stood out to me was the cornflake Illinois one. I mean, obviously, we all look at our food when we eat it, but who looks at a cornflake and says, hey, that's shaped like the state of Illinois? I mean, what does Illinois even look like?
I couldn't tell you. I wouldn't be able to draw it, nor do I really think I want to. I can tell you this much, though. The cornflakes go in my mouth so fast that I don't even think I have the time to acknowledge if they're even a cornflake or not.
I'd have to agree with you there, Brant. Usually when I'm eating cornflakes, I'm usually pretty hungry. So thank you for those facts, Brant. Moving on into my non-sports penny for your thoughts topic. As some of you may know, if you follow me on social media or have talked to me in the last 24 hours from the time we have recorded this segment. Wednesday morning, I had a little run-in with my Chevy Impala with a deer, and I guess the deer was worse off than the car, and I was. Well, I can't really speak for the car. We find out tomorrow if it's totaled or not, but I just wanted to reach out and say thank you to everyone who reached out to me and wished me well. Obviously, it's kind of a scary situation, whatnot. If you haven't seen it, go to my Facebook page and it actually smashed up the windshield, driver's side windshield. And I thought the deer was going to come through the windshield at me. So I'm pretty thankful that that didn't happen. And just thankful to everyone who reached out.
Well, Nate, I know on behalf of me, and I'm sure all of our listeners out there, we sure are glad you're okay. That could be a very serious, very scary incident, especially when they come through the windshield or break the windshield. I know when I saw the pictures of your car, it startled me. It looked pretty scary. So just glad that you're okay. And hopefully the car turns out. And obviously the deer didn't too much, but hey, might be able to get some venison out of it.
Brent, the important thing is I stayed in the car and the deer stayed, I stayed in the car and the deer stayed out. That's the important thing there. But thank you for that. Brent, we're going to move into our sports topic. Penny for your thoughts, Brent. What you got?
Well, let me just say this. To anyone listening who gives a penny for this thought, this might be able to turn your penny into a little bit more than a penny this year. Don't at me on this, but Derek Carr, in my opinion, will be a top 5 quarterback this year. You look at his receiving core. The Raiders just went out and got Devontae Adams this year. They still have Hunter Renfrow. And they sure have the sure-handed Darren Waller at tight end. Now, with Adams coming in, it opens up a whole new arsenal of plays and play styles. And I think that Carr is well-talented enough to match what Adams brings. Maybe not to the extent that Rodgers did, but don't be surprised if Carr is going to be a really good quarterback this year because of that. Now, if you're sitting in your fantasy draft, and you see that there are still quarterbacks out there like Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, maybe Lamar Jackson, I wouldn't consider picking him over them, but you might want to consider him maybe over like a Prescott or a Mahomes, maybe even a Russell Wilson.
Brent, he got a big weapon this year with Devontae Adams. It's gonna be interesting to see what he can do with a weapon in that. And hey, you know what? Vegas is bet city. Maybe you go out, maybe you put some money down on Vegas, maybe you put it on Derek Carr to be MVP, and you never know. Brent, I'm gonna stick with the NFL in my topic. We're both not very big Cowboy fans, but an interesting thing I did see today was the Cowboys are bringing back their all white helmets for their Thanksgiving games. And if you haven't seen this, I encourage you right now, pause this podcast and look it up, because I have to say these are pretty sharp looking helmets. And I think they'll go good with their jerseys that they wear on Thanksgiving. Brant, have you got a chance to see it yet?
Well, actually, I hadn't even heard the news before we were doing our run through about 15 minutes, half an hour ago, and you told me about that. And so I went and looked it up. And, I'm not a big Cowboys fan, but I am a sucker for slick looking uniforms and helmets. And I will say that the cowboy blue with the white helmet, it looks really good.
For sure, for sure. And it's a perfect time to bring it out Thanksgiving, They always plan Thanksgiving just like the Lions do, and perfect time at the new rule to bring it out. We are halfway through the MLB season, which means it's time for the Midsummer Classic, the All-Star Game, with all the events that go with it, the Home Run Derby, the Celebrity Softball Game. Brant, it's a big week for baseball. I know that you were watching the Home Run Derby very closely. What stood out to you in the Home Run Derby?
Well, Nate, I think one of the biggest headlines from the Home Run Derby this All-Star week has to be Albert Winnie the Pujols.
Oh, bother.
He came in a pool that was just filled with 7 young guys, and he proved that, hey, I might be experienced, I might be a little on the older side, I might not be able to hit it as far as you guys, but I can still hit these home runs. Let's take a look at what he did. Round by round, he hit 20 home runs in the first round. That's 13 in the regular time, with 7 in the bonus that was needed to break the tie with Kyle Schwarber, the top-seeded batter in the All-Star Home Run Derby. Then he followed that up with 15 of them in the second round, competed with the soon-to-be champion Juan Soto. He hit 35 total home runs through the 2 rounds. Like I mentioned, he upset the number 1 seeded Kyle Schwarber. Now, there's a lot of back and forth whether he's actually worth the number 1 seed or not, but he's hitting some home runs this year, so we'll leave it at that. And like I mentioned, he lost to the soon-to-be champion Juan Soto in the second round. I think it's a great moment when all the players gathered around him when he called timeout during the first round. They all gathered around him. They all kind of gave him some worship and praise. And I'll touch again on that in a few minutes. But overall, it was a great moment. And what I think this means for baseball is, for one, it gives some of the older generation someone to root for in baseball. A lot of the younger generations only know how talented these younger guys are. They don't know what Albert Pujols used to be. They don't know the bat that he used to be, the experience that he has. So it gave the older guys someone to root for. In addition to that, it just proved that it's not just these young guys in this home run derby who can go out there and hit the ball a mile who deserve to be there. Pujols did not hit a single home run over 440 feet, which was the benchmark for what was needed. You needed to hit 2 of them to get the extra 30 seconds of bonus time. He didn't hit a single one. He was hitting them like 5-10 rows up. So nothing real deep, but he was still getting the job done. And that just goes to show that, they might not be able to hit it as far as these younger guys can, these stronger guys, but them old guys, they could still get the job done hitting those home runs.
Yeah, and Brant, Albert Pujols, he's been in the league for quite a minute now. He has the same swing as the day that he entered the league, and it's an absolutely majestic swing that you can't find anywhere else in baseball. It's absolutely wonderful to watch him bat. The guy that had my attention and I surely just stole the show was Julio Rodriguez, the rookie for Seattle, coming in. He started off 31 home runs, won his matchup by 10. Next round, he hit another 30 home runs, which was absolutely impressive. And unfortunately, he ran out of gas. By the way, in the second round, he knocked off Pete Alonso, Polar Pete, the 2-time defending champion from the New York Mets. And he made his way to the finals, and unfortunately, he lost to Juan Soto. But 81 home runs for a rookie in the home run derby is absolutely incredible. Brant, we're going a little bit on time here. I want to get your quick thoughts of the All-Star game itself. What do you think? What did you think of the Tuesday night's Midsummer Classic?
Well, I think that there's a reason to touch on the moment. The people who are calling into question that the All-Star game has become too much of a pitcher's game. It's understandable. You do have the world's best hitters, but you also have the world's best pitchers. Let's take a look at the box score. I got the box score in front of me from the game. The AL had 3 runs on 8 hits. The NL had 2 runs on 5 hits. Now, all the runs came off of 4 hits, but if we just take a quick second to compare it to other All-Star games in other sports, such as the NBA, where there's really no defense, and the Pro Bowl and the NHL, where there's a good amount of both, I just think the NBA or the MLB rather is just different. You know, to me, it's a different defensive game. It's a different kind of defensive game when in the MLB, it's just a pitcher's game. I mean, you might see some glove flashing and stuff like that, as opposed to like goaltending, interception, stuff like that in hockey and football. To me, it's a little bit less entertaining, but I mean, it's come to be expected. It's the world's best pitchers versus the world's best batters.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. There was a great double play there in the first inning pulled by the American League infield. Ended up flipping it behind his back. Second baseman did to the shortstop covering second, who flipped to the first for the double play. But also a good amount of home runs going on. There were 3 home runs the very next play after the double play. In fact, Paul Goldschmidt hit one out. I always think that he's always been a very underrated batter. And I think that was a good chance for him to show off, hey, I'm an old guy, but I still have the bat in me. And I absolutely love him. Also, Giancarlo Stanton grew up in Los Angeles, went to Dodger games, hit a home run right about where he used to sit. And that was followed up the next at bat by Byron Buxton, who ended up hitting the game deciding home run. But there was a good amount of offense and defense there. So definitely Midsummer Classic. It didn't disappoint.
Well, mate, let's stay on the topic of baseball here for a second. Juan Soto was in the news more this week than just winning the home run derby. And that came in the fact that he turned down what was set to be one of the biggest contracts in Major League Baseball history and in all of sports. It was a 15-year, $440 million contract. What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, Brent, that is an absolutely major contract. And I'm going to be honest with you, he's a young player, but that would have kept him in DC for probably most of his career there. I mean, 15 years, that's a long time. And the money wise, it's absolutely a lot of money, but he's definitely a very deserving player.
Well, one thing that I want to touch on with this is where does this decline come from? Is it about money or is it about success? Let's take a look at the Nationals for a second. They were the 2019 World Series champions. They won 93 games in that regular season. Since then, they've only won 122 games in the 2.5 seasons since then. They have made no playoff appearances. They likely aren't going to make it this year because right now they are the worst team in baseball record-wise. So to me, this contract decline has to be about winning. He sees where the direction is going in Washington. He doesn't like it. And much like some other players who have turned down massive contracts, let's take a look at some like Tim Lincecum. Back in 2011, he was a San Francisco pitcher. He turned down $100 million over 5 years, and then he tanked. And he ended up signing for San Fran for 2 years, $20 million, half of what he was going to get paid. Look at Jason Pierre-Paul in the NFL rather. He was the Giants' defensive end. In 2015, he had a short-term $60 million contract set up until that firework accident. But before then, he was planning on declining that offer anyway. DeMarcus Cousins in the NBA. He was the center for the Kings for a number of years. He turned down a 2-year, $40 million contract and ended up signing with the Warriors for 1 year and $5 million. Why did those guys turn down the offers that they did? Because they saw the direction where the teams were going and they didn't like it. They wanted to win. Now, in my opinion, I agree with these players. I don't blame them one bit for turning down the big contracts. A few $1 million a year is more than enough to get you by. But if you aren't winning, if you aren't having success, it's hard to stay happy. It's hard to stay motivated. And in my opinion, I'd much rather have success over getting paid an abundance of money that you're probably not even going to end up spending in your lifetime. I don't know about you, Nate. I would take a couple $1 million a year.
Yeah, Brent. I mean, I'm probably with you there. I'd honestly, if I was getting paid, I mean, we're talking about millionaires, talking about millions of dollars, you know. At the end of the day, if I would make $5 million less and win a World Series ring, I'd be with it. But I just wanted to throw out a couple contracts in other sports that have been pretty big recently that have been accepted. Johnny Gaudreau, previously with the Calgary Flames, now with the Columbus Blue Jackets in the NHL. He's on a 7-year, $68 million contract with them. And that, I believe, is more about money than anything, because I don't see Columbus being a contender quite yet. And then just the other day, and the NBA, James Harden, 2 years, $68 million contract to Philadelphia, a playoff contender. They're looking to possibly be contenders for a championship. That's their goal. I mean, that's $30 million a year. That is just a lot of money. And personally, I don't care where I would be. If I'm making $30 million a year, send me anywhere.
Well, let me ask you, Nate, what do you think would be, like you mentioned Gaudreau, what do you think would be his motivation for choosing the money over success? Do you think he wants to be the face of the franchise? Do you think he doesn't get bothered by losing, which said no one ever? Do you think he won't be able to get somewhere, or at least he thinks he won't be able to get somewhere successful? What do you think his motivation is there?
Well, personally, Brian, I mean, every player is a little bit different. If we're talking about the Johnny Gaudreau situation here, I think Johnny Gaudreau, I mean, he may not be the best overall player in hockey, but he changes the game everywhere he goes. That takes Columbus. That takes them from absolutely no chance to, okay, maybe they can compete for a playoff spot. He just changes the game. So it doesn't matter if they're good or bad. They at least have a slim chance with Gaudreau.
All right, this next segment is something that I'm really excited about. It's out of the page of Central Michigan's student broadcast station, something that they do, or at least used to do, that I always love listening to, Chip Chat, which is just basically a sports talk, just like Nathan and I are doing right now. They do this segment called Highlights and Lowlights. So basically what they do is each week they pick one thing from sports that was good, a highlight of sports, and one thing that was not so good, a low light of sport. So Nate, let's go ahead and start. I'll start with you. What is your highlight of the week?
Oh, Brent, the ESPYs. This actually just came last night, Wednesday night, I should say. We're recording this on a Thursday night. The ESPYs were last night, and Dick Vitale ended up winning the Jimmy V Award for Perseverance. And that's a guy who I've had a lot of Q&As at Full Sail University. I can't remember. I never attended a Q&A with him, but he still had a huge impact on my learning process, just because it shows that, it takes hard to be in the industry that I'm in the sportscasting industry. And if you want to look at heart, go no further than Dick Vitale. Just absolutely beautiful speech he had last night. Just a wonderful person, inspiration to all. He's beat cancer a couple different times and still just has the biggest smile on his face. So way to go, Dickie V.
I love that too. I saw the highlights from that video, and when he acknowledged his family, that is a very heart-touching moment there. He's just a great character and a guy who certainly, especially in your industry, is one to be looked up at. Now, my highlight comes from, once again, the All-Star game this week, and it's a guy who is very loved around here, very loved in the city of Detroit, Miguel Cabrera, and the up and rising Julio Rodriguez. There was a video of those two in the dugout during the All-Star game having a good conversation between a sure-to-be Hall of Famer and a very, very bright-futured rookie in the Mariners organization. Now, what this conversation was it a passing of the torch? Was it a sharing of knowledge? Was it, where do you want to go to eat after this? I don't know. I would have just loved to have been a fly on one of their caps. I would not have loved to have been a ball flying at one of their bats, but I would have loved to have been able to hear that conversation and just know that knowledge of what was being passed from Cabrera to Rodriguez in a moment like that.
Absolutely, Brant. Just, the veteran and the young guy. Great to see a conversation like that.
So, Nate, let's get into the low light. What did you pick this week as your low light moment?
I'm going to kind of build off your MLB moment there. I'm going to stay out in Los Angeles. They were doing introductions for the Home Run Derby, and they had all the guys up there on stage, and they had a cool little flamethrower in the back. And as you're watching the guys being introduced, they're spitting up the flames, and all of a sudden you see a couple guys that kind of like whip around like it surprised them. They can feel the heat. Like they're at the front of the stage, all 8 of them getting a photo taken, and there's just flames, just absolutely. I mean, the flamethrower controller guy, I mean, he was just going to town on it. And these guys were like, holy cow. He almost killed all 8 guys with that flamethrower. Maybe that's a bit of exaggeration there from me, but it was funny to watch as all them guys just whip around like, holy cow, that's hot. So that would be my low light of the week.
I saw that highlight, Nathan, and I thought it was hilarious. The way that the guys jumped out of the way. I mean, it was a huge flamethrower. So it had to be hot. And I don't blame them a bit for getting out of there, but it was funny to watch. Weird enough, I'm going to stay with the Home Run Derby for my low light. And it's something that I mentioned a little bit earlier. My low light is actually going to be the awkwardness that I saw when Albert Pujols got his little worship session after calling timeout in the Home Run Derby. Everyone gathered around him as he was in that timeout and was kind of giving him some worship and praise during what appeared to be the final at bat of his Home Run Derby career. It was a nice moment, like I mentioned earlier, but to me, it kind of almost felt like when a middle school boy acts out his crush and like all the boys gather around him to celebrate. Nobody's touching him. Nobody's hugging him or giving him high fives. There are people bowing down and worshiping him. And he's just kind of standing there like, thanks guys, I'm doing my best I can. And, it seemed a little awkward to me. I don't know if it did to anyone else, but it just seemed a little awkward. And then Pujols advanced to the next round. And it's like, oh, well, that great / awkward moment was kind of like pushed aside after that because that wasn't his last at bat.
I got Brent. You gave him that nickname earlier with the Winnie the Pools or whatever. I guess you could say as he was sitting there getting bowed down to, is sitting there thinking, "Oh bother."
Yeah, I would say so.
It is almost the most wonderful time of the year, ladies and gentlemen. No, we're not talking about Christmas. We're talking about fantasy football. Your drafts are coming up. Our drafts are coming up. I know we're excited. I hope you're excited too. Brant, let's break that down a little bit. I got a couple questions, a couple topics to go over with you. First of all, I already know how you stand on this. Let's incite the viewers a little bit. What is the most important position for you to take early on?
Well, for me, and for really anyone out there, in my opinion, it's got to be premium running backs or guys like Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Barkley, McCaffrey, Cook. Those guys who do not share the ball very often, don't split carries. Those guys are a premium in leagues because they're going to be racking up rushing yards like crazy. I would even consider the next tier being Eckler, Harris, Mixon. Chubb kind of does carry or does split the carries a little bit, but Zeke Elliott is another good one. You got to take those premium running backs because wide receivers are easily fillable in those positions, in my opinion. Maybe not premier receivers, But you got to keep in mind, there are 2 to 4 receivers on the field at once, and there's usually only one running back. You have to get that solid base at running back. It will help your team a ton.
You know, Brent, I agree with you there. Running back's very important. It just kind of depends on where you pick, though. I mean, we have a snake draft. I know some people may or may not. If you get towards if you're an 8-man league, like 6, 7, 8, take a wide receiver. Take that top wide receiver, especially if you're in a PPR league. But I agree with you there. Definitely down the long run, it ultimately comes down to who has the best running backs, whose running backs did the best. And Brant, another important position in fantasy football is quarterbacks. And when do you take a quarterback? What round do you sit there and say, you know what, it's time, let's go get him?
Well, here's my thought on that. If you are in a position, first pick, second pick, third pick in these snake drafts, your first pick is a running back. Your second pick, you might want to consider taking some of those great QBs that I talked about earlier off the board. If you take a solid running back, back that up with a solid quarterback, that would be a great fill for me. Late second round, early third round.
You know, Brant, I agree with you. The only quarterback I'd really have to go after this year, and again, I know there's people are going to be like, what? Josh Allen, obviously, I think is going to be an absolute monster again. I'd take him. If I had to decide when to take him, I'd go earlier than the third, maybe the fourth. Everyone else, I just kind of see how it's flowing. You can get a lot of good quarterbacks. I mean, especially if you're in like an 8-man league, you're guaranteed a top 10 quarterback unless someone decides, hey, I'm going to draft Patrick Mahomes as a backup to Josh Allen, which, I mean, come on. Then you would be getting trade offers like crazy trying to get one of those quarterbacks from you, and rightfully so. One of the most underrated positions in fantasy football, Brant, as we have both found out, has been kickers. What's your stance on kickers?
This is going to be very surprising coming from me, but they are not crucial. I will say that right now. A kicker can make or break your team, but like quarterbacks, valuable kickers are plenty. You might not get the most premier ones, but that is an easily fillable position. If you look at Justin Tucker, he's the best out there, but other guys will do too. You don't need to reach too far for Tucker. The only reason why I do is to make our cousin Ryan annoyed because he's a Ravens fan and I have to have his kicker.
Yeah, Brant, I mean, I'll be honest with you. In case a lot of our viewers probably don't know this, but Brant, let's kick it back to a couple of years ago. By absolute complete, I don't even know how to describe it. I accidentally took Will Lutz in the first round. Will Lutz wasn't even the best kicker that year. I don't know how that happened. I was trying to do desktop mode on my phone and it just completely failed. So, but I'm kind of with you there. Kickers, they can definitely help you, but they're not even close to the most important position out there. Real quick, Brant, we are closing down on time in this segment. But I want to know, obviously, one of the big hot button topics, punishment for losers. Brant, if someone, obviously you're going to have a loser of the league, what are you making them do?
Well, I think one of the best ideas out there is the Buffalo Wild Wings Blazing Challenge. Not just to try it, eat one and then be done, but you actually have to try to do it well. But I think one of the better ones is the Waffle House / IHOP challenge. So what you do is you sit in a Waffle House or IHOP if, there's no Waffle House around, because obviously there aren't up here in Michigan. You have to sit there for 24 hours. Each pancake you eat takes 1 hour off your time, and then you can leave. You cannot leave until you eat enough pancakes and spend enough time in the restaurant to get to the 24 hours. You might eat, 20 pancakes and sit there for 4 hours. So a bonus little addition to that is that second to last in our league, it'd be 7th place, has to sit there and officiate it and update the league members on how it's going. So almost like you don't want to finish 7th either. You don't have to do the full challenge, but you have to sit there and waste your time as well.
Right. You have to be there. That's an interesting one there. And Brant, I was thinking about it quite a bit too. And one of the more interesting ones that I've thought of is before the season, at your league meetings, at your league drafts, you have to set this in stone. That way you can't overcut and you can't undercut. But the loser, if you're an 8-man league like we are, the 8th finisher has to buy everyone else dinner. Now, you could go fancy and you could go set it to be okay. You don't want to be the loser. Let's go, Texas Roadhouse, which holy cow, I'm sorry for your wallet if that's the case. But, you could set McDonald's if you want to, but, maybe like a nice Red Robin, treat everyone to burgers, maybe even a Pizza Hut, just the loser, the 8th place person has to buy every single other person dinner to end out the league year.
Well, mate, for our final segment today, we're going to go to the racetrack, and we're going to talk about a little bit of NASCAR news, a little bit of something that's been in the conversation a lot this year has been up-and-comer Ross Chastain with his new team Trackhouse, and how he's been rattling a lot of cages this year, especially that of team owner Denny Hamlin for 23XI Racing. The debate comes down to whether Ross Chastain is driving aggressively or if he's driving dirty. Now, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Do you think that he is being aggressive, or do you think that he is being dirty?
Brandon, I think it's a little bit of both. There was that one race at Worldwide Technology to where in a matter of maybe 20 laps, he had taken out 2 guys, Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott. That that might be a little bit over the top. I don't think he was trying to, and his interview, he beat himself up. But Jeff Burton said something about Ross Chastain not too long after when Denny Hamlin and him got into the mishap at Atlanta, which was, I think, on both them. Ross Chastain now, if there's a what he said is, if there's a cookie missing from a jar, it's going to be blamed on Ross Chastain, meaning if there's a wreck that Ross Chastain is even within 5 feet of, he's going to get blamed. So there is that very fine line between being too aggressive. And, obviously I know that I'm a Joey Logano fan, so I know very well what aggressive versus non-aggressive or too aggressive is. But nonetheless, Ross Chastain, he's going to be under the microscope for the rest of the year because his hands been caught in a jar once, and now when there's a cookie missing, it's going to be him that gets blamed.
I like the way you put that, Nathan. But let me tell you this. I think that Ross Chastain is not racing dirty. He is racing aggressively. He has always been an aggressive driver, all the way through the lower series, all the way up until where he is now. Sometimes racing incidents are going to happen. You've got 40 drivers out there on the track, all competing for the same thing, all looking for the same spot. It's going to happen. Does it get annoying when it happens all the time and to the same people? Yes, but let's not make it something that it's not. Let's not make it seem like Ross Chastain is just a dirty driver and is out here to wreck everybody. As an owner, I would want an aggressive driver. I know Justin Marks wants an aggressive driver. My question now is that should Ross Chastain be concerned about retaliation, or should he just expect to be raced hard?
Brant, I think he has to go in with the expectation of being raced hard, especially if he's like leading out of the few laps going. Denny Hamlin's right behind him. He's got to expect that. I don't think there should be retaliation from any end. I mean, Denny Hamlin, I know that he's been chomping his jaws about it the last few weeks. If he is the mature guy that he is in the sport, and don't get me wrong, he's a very mature guy. He's a team owner. He doesn't retaliate here. He's got to set an example for his team, for his young driver of Bubba Wallace, and here in a couple of years, Tyler Reddick. You can't be going out there and retaliating if you're on Denny Hamlin's behalf. So I wouldn't be worried about retaliation if I was Ross just for that. But you can bet your bottom dollar that if he's leading on the last lap and someone he's run into in the past is right there behind him, like Chase Elliott or Denny Hamlin, he's going to get his bumper. He's going to get moved. Let's put it that way.
I have to agree with you there, Nathan. I think all drivers, it's hard racing. Denny Hamlin, he's going to talk the talk. He's a team owner. He's been in the sport a number of years. And here comes this brand new kid who's coming in and he's racing aggressively. And it's ended up costing a lot of teams quite a bit of money. So you know what? He's just going to sit here. He's going to talk. He's going to scare the kid a little bit, make him think that there's some retaliation coming. I mean, people who follow the sport know what happened at WWT Raceway. You know, Denny wouldn't let him by. It was rather comical to see. He wouldn't let him by. He held him up. Do I think there's retaliation in the future from Denny? No. I don't think Denny is that kind of guy. He's just going to talk the talk to make Ross make him scared. Maybe try to make him think about his actions a little bit. But I don't think it's going to turn into any retaliation. Now, my final question for you, Nathan, is that if there is retaliation involved, when is it coming? When do you think it should come?
I don't think it should come at all. I'm making that very clear right now. But I will entertain the fact for the podcast purpose for, kind of play devil's advocate a little bit. And I think it's got to come at a meaningful moment, but not too meaningful. I mean, let's be honest here. Denny Hamlin, when he got dumped by Ross Chastain both times, he wasn't leading. It wasn't the final lap of the race. You look at the Joey Logano, William Byron situation. Byron had every right to dump Logano if he's going for a win, because that's exactly what Byron was doing when Logano dumped him, or whichever way you see it. Obviously, I'm a Logano fan, whatever. Everybody's going to see it differently. But Hamlin, I really don't think it should be when he's going for a win. It should just be, but like I said, no retaliation at all. Just go out there, race him hard, and make him learn his lesson.
Now, there's a lot of people out there who say that Ross's retaliation, or the retaliation against Ross, rather, is going to be coming at a very bad time. It's going to lose him a chance at winning a championship. Now, here's why I think that that's not true. When Denny had his instance with Ross, he was in safe positions. He's in the playoffs. He's got 2 wins. He's not going to be missing the playoffs. He will have a chance to race for a championship. So really all it is bruises that he's got. He doesn't like getting beat up a little bit. Now, if Denny comes in the playoffs and takes out Ross Chastain and loses him a chance to win the championship, to me, that is like bruises versus intentionally breaking someone's leg. It would be completely uncalled for. I think if Denny is going to get the retaliation, he needs to do it before the playoffs. Ross Chastain is completely in. He's good. He's got 2 wins as well. Now, is there a little bit loss of, you could earn more points to get a better spot in the playoffs? Sure. But getting taken out now is not going to be absolutely detrimental to losing a championship. And I just think that if there's going to be retaliation, it needs to be within these next 6 races before the playoffs, or it needs to just be let go.
Absolutely. And I mean, we're seeing one of the most interesting seasons. We have a chance at 16 winners this year. And I think you're right. It's got to come in the next 6 races, because just like you're talking about, that would be like someone shooting a rubber band at you and you turning around and throwing a boulder at them, if you take them out in the playoffs and ruin a chance at the play or a championship for them. So I agree with you. It's got to come pretty soon. And there's some tracks that might offer a good chance for that.
For sure. There's plenty of chances coming up. And I think that if Denny is going to take that retaliation, he will take the chance to do it within these next few races. Well, that's all the time we have today for Beyond the Headset with Brant and Nate. We're not exactly sure what our future content will be as far as next week or future weeks go, but you can expect in the next few weeks, in the coming months, that you will hear about Michigan and Michigan State football, Lions season outlook, NFL talks, as well as more fantasy football talk. There's a lot of football coming up here in these next few months. You can expect coverage of the second half of the MLB season, Red Wings news, and a bunch more. Nathan, do you have any last thoughts before we send it away for the week?
Yeah, Brett, this has been fun. This has been something that we were talking about for a long time. I'm glad we're finally taking action into trying to get something weekly out there. So to our viewers out there, thank you for being part of this first ever Beyond the Headset podcast. Drive safe and watch for deer. So heed my advice there.
And for those of you wondering, we just came up with a name idea this afternoon. We decided probably about an hour before recording this podcast what the name was going to be. We like Beyond the Headset. We hope you do too, and we hope that you've enjoyed listening to us. And we'd like to thank you for tuning in this week. And we sure hope that you'll tune in for the next time that Brant and Nate go Beyond the Hit.